Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing how I made this adorable cat card, which is part of the Cat Lovers blog hop, or YouTube hop in my case. And I used a lot of Heffy Doodle supplies for this card. So this card is actually featured on the Heffy Doodle blog, where you can go and see lots of other cat themed cards made using Heffy Doodle supplies. And of course, links to continue to hop along the blog hop to see lots of other cat themed inspiration. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. I'm starting by blending the background of this card, and I really wanted it to look like a spooky night sky to fit in with the Halloween theme. So I took 4 colors of Distress Oxide inks, and I'm starting with yellow, which is squeezed lemonade, and I'm just blending it onto my slimline panel in a circle. I just wanted this to be sort of like the focal point, almost like a glow coming from one of the cats. Next, I moved on to the pink color, which is Kitsch Flamingo, and I'm blending that around that yellow circle in, again, that kind of circular shape, taking some care to blend back and forth so that you get a little bit of blending between those 2 colors, and you'll see it kind of starts to appear like a little bit of orange. Next, I'm going to be going to the purple, which is Seedless Preserves, and finally I'm going to be adding the blue, which is Chipped Sapphire Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to be applying these in the same way using my blending brushes in sort of that circular pattern, like all of the colors are radiating out from that yellow focal point. I just wanted to mention I'm using my blending brushes for all of this, and for those first few colors I use these tiny blending brushes, and I'm moving on to the bigger blending brushes when I get out onto sort of the edges of the panel with the darker colors because there's more space. But for these sort of detailed areas where I'm blending on that focal point, I really wanted some sort of fine detailed blending, so that's why I'm using those smaller brushes. These particular ones I actually just picked up at the dollar store, but I think I am going to invest now that I've realized how useful they can be. I think I am going to invest in some sort of better quality ones from an actual crafting supply store very soon. So that's how the blending ends up looking. I am going to take some gold watercolor and splatter this out onto the whole panel just to give it a little extra detail, shimmer, and shine. I just put a little bit of gold watercolor onto an acrylic block, and then I can splatter it all out using a paintbrush. Next, I'm blending the ground pieces. So I took 2 slimline rectangles and cut them out using a stitched hillside border die. So I have 2 pieces just like this, and I'm blending both in the same way. And for both of them, I'm starting with a light green color at the bottom. This is peeled paint, and then I'm blending black on the top. That's Black Soot Distress Oxide ink. And for these, I'm just using some foam applicators. I tend to just go back and forth between my blending applicator tools. I enjoy both brushes and foam applicators. So this is the second panel now, and I'm blending it the same way, that black at the top and the green at the bottom, and just going back and forth to kind of try to get a nice blend between them. I really wanted this to be very spooky, which is why I'm blending with black, which I don't normally do unless I really want sort of like a very light accent color of black, but I just wanted that ground to look like super spooky ground. Okay, so now getting into sort of some of the elements that are going to be going on this card. I'm starting with the cats, and I really wanted these to look like ghost cats, which I realized after is a little bit morbid. Of course, none of us want to imagine our cats being dead, but I just thought this idea of ghost cats was super spooky, so I'm imagining these as like fun ghost cats that enjoy haunting other cats, in the afterlife or something. So I stamped them all out with Versamark ink onto some pearlescent vellum. This pearlescent vellum is actually by Lawn Fawn, and it's a vellum that has a really, really nice iridescent sort of aspect to it that shines in the light. And I took these cat stamps from Heffy Doodle's Perfect Day stamp set, which is adorable. It has all of these cat images, as well as a cat tree image in the stamp set, which I'm not using on this card, but it is very cute. So I heat set those after I had dabbed on the white embossing powder with my heat tool. And so then you get these 4 cats stamped in white heat embossing on pearlescent vellum. But as I'm sure many of you are aware, vellum is a little bit see-through, it's translucent, so I was really struggling with how to figure out how to adhere these caps to my card without seeing the adhesive behind them. What I ended up doing was taking a piece of Stick It adhesive, which I'm working with here. It's basically a clear adhesive with release paper on each side. So what I did was I cut it down to the right size, and then I took the release paper off the first side, and then I can stick my cats down onto that so that since I released the release paper, it sort of exposed the stickiness, and these cats will stick right on. Then I can go in and cut each cat out, and I'm just fussy cutting here, leaving a little bit of a border outside of that white embossing because I just wanted a little bit of the vellum edge sort of around the cats. Once I do that, I'll have all 4 cats with this sticky background on them, because after I release the second piece of release paper, of course. So it basically turns these pearlescent vellum cats into stickers. And you'll see how they stick down onto the card surface when I get to assembling the card in just a little bit. Okay, so another part of this card, or another element on this card, are these spooky sort of birch trees. And these birch tree stamps come in a different Heffy Doodle stamp set. It is the Dear to Me stamp set. And I'm stamping these out on black cardstock with, again, that same Versamark ink, because I'm going to be white heat embossing these as well, just like the cats, but instead of on vellum, I'm stamping them onto black. So I cut down a piece of black cardstock to be just big enough for 2 of these trees, and I'm flipping it over so that I can stamp the trees twice, so you get 2 of each tree. Once I'm done with that stamping, I will be putting that white heat embossing powder onto the trees, just sort of applying it at the top and then letting it settle down the cardstock so that it coats all of those trees. And if there is any sort of stray embossing powder, I do like to just come in with either my detail pick tool or a brush to just get all that extra little bits off, and tapping the back of the cardstock really helps with that too. So once I've heat set these, you see you get those glossy sort of white birch trees on that black cardstock. I didn't want these to be flat though, so I did come in with a white pencil crayon and add a little bit of sort of highlighting to the trees. What I'm doing is just taking that white pencil crayon and going all the way down one side of each tree so that it looks like the light is hitting the tree on that side. Then to add a shadow on the other side of the tree, I'm coming in with my Versamarker pen. And this is a pen that just applies Versamark ink, just like we use to emboss. But what happens when you sort of draw that on paper is that it creates almost like a tone-on-tone effect, where it creates a little bit of a darker look to that paper. So that created a nice shadow. So I did that on all the trees as well. I cut a banner shape out of black cardstock using another Heffy Doodle die, and I'm just stamping on a sentiment here. The sentiment comes from that Perfect Day stamp set, and it says, "Have a perfect day," but I only wanted part of the sentiment. I wanted the "have a perfect," because I'm going to be ending it with Meowloween, as you can kind of see up in the top right. So I just taped off the word day, and then I stamped "Have a perfect" in Versamark ink again, and I'm doing more white heat embossing so that I get the words "have a perfect" in white heat embossing, and I'll heat set that with my heat tool as well. So then I have the black sentiment banner that says "Have a perfect," and then I've die cut the words Meowloween out of some glitter cardstock, both orange and black, and you'll see a little bit more of that in just a moment here. But now we're going to get started on actually assembling the whole card. So I brought back my sky panel, and I'm just sort of layering up the trees and the hillsides and putting them on one at a time with some liquid glue. And I wanted a little bit of variety here, so I put one tree in the very back, and then I put the hillside, and then I put another tree over that hillside. Now I'm putting a second tree over that hillside, then coming in with the second hillside, and then finally I'll add the final tree at the very front. And this is just a nice way to kind of create some dimension in your cards to make it look like there's sort of multiple layers here. Now off camera, I did go ahead and stamp and color a whole bunch of other images in sort of a Halloween-y theme, and the stamp sets that these come from will all be listed down in the video description below. They're all from Heffy Doodle, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. Like I mentioned, I did use some Heffy Doodle alphabet dies to cut out the word Meowloween. Meow was from orange glitter cardstock, and then the second part of the word was out of black glitter cardstock. And I'm just gluing those down straight onto that card front, one by one, with some liquid glue. I wanted them to be right in the middle of the card, sort of like a focal point. Then I can put that banner just above so you get the whole sentiment saying, "Have a perfect Meowloween." Okay, now I'm going to finally stick down these cats like I had mentioned. They're kind of like stickers. So they're left with that release paper on the back, and I was having a really hard time getting it off. If this ever happens to you, a really good way to handle it is to take an X-Acto knife and just cut a very small kind of cut into the back of the release paper. Do this very gently because, of course, you don't want to cut through the vellum or whatever image you have in the front. But if you cut very gently, you can just cut through that release paper, and then you can sort of bend it apart and peel it off. So that X-Acto knife was a really good way to help take that release paper off. So I went through the whole panel and adhered all of the images down in the places where I wanted them, and then I can come in and just cut off the bottoms of those trees that had been sticking out of the bottom of the panel with my scissors, just to make sure that everything lines up, of course. And then when this is done, I will be able to glue this whole panel down onto a slimline card base and finish off the card. So I'm just finishing cutting off that last tree, and then like I said, I can glue the panel onto a white slimline card base. By the way, slimline Dimensions, or at least the ones I've used here, are 3.5 by 8.5 inches, which is just a really nice amount of space for a card. I'd actually initially designed this as just a landscape A2 size card, which is much smaller. It's 4.25 by 5.5, but I knew I needed more space for all these ghost cats, so that's why I expanded it. Okay, so this is the final card, and as I turn it in the light, you can see how sparkly it is with all of that gold splatter in the background, and then the pearlescent vellum for the cats just shining, and of course those glittery words, and I just love adding as much sparkle to my cards as possible, so I love this. I really think that those pearlescent vellum cats came out really well. I wasn't sure how they would. I actually did a test one before doing all the rest, just to make sure, but I really like how they came out, so if you want to turn any images into ghosts, I highly encourage it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoy all of the other cat-themed cards that you'll see along the hop today. Check out the video description below for more. See you next time. Bye!